Welcome to Timberborn and the settlement of the Steeltide. If you're just joining in, this is a new playthrough of the Iron Teeth on hard mode. We're playing on the Terraces map. In this video, we're going to be building our bad tide diversion system, surviving an absolutely unexpected and brutal bad tide, and getting our beavers off the mountain. First, there's a couple things on my mind. We're a couple cycles in, and we are due for a bad tide, but we don't yet have a way to handle it. Second, our beavers are stuck on top of this mesa. We've got no way down, and that's kind of limiting our growth. So both of those things need to be addressed in this episode. The bigger issue is the bad tide, though. I think we need to figure out a solution for that first, because that could really set back our colony. What I'm thinking is we've got the perfect opportunity to dump the bad tide off the edge of this cliff. Instead of letting it go all the way down here and out the front, I'm thinking what we could do is look at the source of the water here and just make a mini dam up here and divert the water off the edge when it comes. So to that end, we need to kind of make a path in here because I think anything we try to construct in here is too far away from any build path. So I don't think any builders can actually get back there. And I'm guessing our log pile is pretty full, so our loggers are not going to do anything. So let's kind of get that started. Let's add a second industrial pile over here. And I want to kind of force the builders to get logging that area. So I'm going to temporarily force their hand. I'm going to force them to log kind of a road back through the trees so we can get access to build back here. So we're going to have to clear everything around the edges anyways. So we'll make sure they cut all of those. While we're at it, the other thing I want to do is stop replanting these pine trees. The pine trees were just kind of a temporary measure to get things going in the beginning of the game. Now that we've got a steady supply of oak trees in here, I don't need quick trees anymore. So I can see them already busy getting that row cut down. Let's take a look and start planning what we're going to do for the mitigation strategy. What I am thinking, since we don't yet have triple floodgates, and that takes a lot of science, we're going to build double floodgates up like this. And then we're going to surround all of this area once the trees are out with basically levees. And then over here, the idea is that we're going to make a little bit of run of logs, and we're going to dump the bad tide right off the edge of this cliff. To get across, we're also going to need some platforms. Double or even triple platforms would be preferred. And those cost a little bit of science, but it's going to take us a little bit to get in there to log the route anyway, so maybe I will get that much science. And we have to do this quickly because any of our next tides could be a bad tide. We don't know when it's going to come, so it could be, for all we know, only a couple days away. In a worst case scenario, we do have enough food stockpiled that we might be able to weather it. And we don't have that big of a population. So usually like the first bad tide, I think, is relatively mild duration wise. So we might be able to just live off our stockpiled supplies. One other thing I think I'm going to do while this is in order though, we don't need a lot of gears for this. This is all going to be planks and logs. So I'm going to pause our gear production just for the duration of this project so we don't exhaust all our planks making gears. Luckily, it looks like our builders can start getting to this first bit of work, so we're not wasting all this time. And since we really want this built quickly, I'm going to temporarily boost our workers over at our district. We've got most of the trees clear cut around the water source now. So now what we're going to do is basically lay down those levees all the way around. And I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and make kind of a little two platforms here so they can get over to the side. Since we still don't have enough science to be able to afford kind of a double platform. What the Beavers can do is they can kind of walk in here, get this last one done, and we've got a drought approaching. But honestly, that's actually kind of good for us. That means it's not a bad tide. The worst case scenario would have been a bad tide, and we'd be rushing to finish this. We already know that we can survive a drought. I think that means that we're honestly in a really good position. We're going to be able to finish, guarantee that we have our diversion set up before the next bad tide occurs. Now, long term, having our trees here is going to be a problem because of the bad tide. Like eventually the bad tide's going to get so long that the contamination will kill all of these off. And I don't really have a good answer for that. Like Folktale, they have a contamination barrier, but for the Iron Teeth, I think their version of the contamination barrier blocks irrigation too. So that is kind of a downer. We'd have to kind of reroute clean water back here to make this green. And with that, we've got our mitigation strategy planned for the bad tide. It's relatively basic, but I think this would do the job. We're going to kill off potentially some of the trees, depending on how long that bad tide is. but that is going to at least allow us to save the rest of our good water for the duration. And now that we've had the beavers kind of cleared this path, let's get them cutting trees down again. Highest priority, I want them to cut down all of these pine trees again, just so I can get rid of them. Now that all our building work is done, we can go ahead and reduce our builders down to just one. We'll make that low priority. Before let's block off our floodgate before that drought arrives. We can do it up here too. We've got an 8-day drought, so that's going to be our longest drought yet. But I think between our upper dam now and our medium tanks, we're going to be in okay shape. Well, we've got this dry season. I want to do something really quick and just kind of clean up our storage towers so we can get a little bit more out of them. Kind of want to shift these so that they're matching, and then I could potentially build like a tower upward. So I'm going to have to kind of rearrange our kohlrabi and our berry storage just a little bit. So we'll pull out this stuff. Build a new medium warehouse. And we're basically just going to move all our kohlrabis from here over to the other side. And we're basically going to shift that. So we're going to destroy it, move it over one, and repeat the same process. We're basically going to shuffle all the berries over to this new one. Coal Town chips in, and again, that doesn't take any time at all. And for this one, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take the cassava and put it somewhere. Because you notice we've got a full supply of cassava. We need some place to store that. This is kind of silly, but those tree stumps really bother me. So a really quick way that you can get rid of them is by building something on top of them and then immediately destroying the things that you want to build. Things are looking pretty stable now. I think we're ready for our next project. Next thing, I want to get off this mountain. We've been stuck here, there's no way down, and it's kind of limiting the areas that we can grow into. If we had a ton of resources, I wouldn't mind getting over into these ruins. The other area that I could potentially see us going down to is here. Because we've got access to water, we could dam this up and potentially have some more green space through the drought. We can also have more room for different forests that we can plant. The other thing I'm thinking is that we could potentially extend off of this and make long-term a nice little dam down here. Because really, we don't have a lot of retaining water for the upper terrace, so we could make something here. Because really, I'm trying to think of what we can build without dynamite, since we don't have dynamite yet. So let's try that. First thing I'm going to do, I want to get rid of these berries. We're not using them. Eventually, we can get a forester to kind of make this a little bit more dense and clean it up. But we are going to go down and get off this hill. We're at the road here. So this is relatively cheap. We can just put a few stairs all the way down. And then once we're down here, I'm going to start with just kind of a lumberjack to clear out the trees. We can clear everything out here and then kind of figure out what we want to plan with it. High priority, though, will be getting over to this area to put a floodgate up. Because we only have builders and it's a single path, it's going to kind of take a while to build that stairs down. While the builder finishes that up, though, let's take a look at our water. Our water level is going pretty quickly. We do have more beavers this time. We're about 24 beavers, but you can see our water level is rapidly going down. We're about halfway through, and we're only 3 days into the drought. So this is where this extra supply is going to come in handy. I'm just going to open this up and kind of top us off just a little bit. Now, I think this does highlight how little water we still do have here. We really don't have that much retaining water up here. I mean, we could potentially expand this a bit. Like if we put an extra wall of wood on this side and this side, we could potentially get a little bit more water. But even that isn't going to be a ton, which makes me think that we should start planning our next kind of supply of water. Like you always want to be a little bit in front of the curve in terms of drought duration and water supply. And we're in front of it now. Like we're going to get through this drought okay. But if that drought gets up to say like 16 days, we'd start being in a much trickier position. And I think that's what makes this map really interesting. Like in other maps, what you would do is basically go upriver and block upriver. But we're starting at the source, so there's no upriver to go up. Instead, what I'm thinking is that we can go downriver and cap this off. It's a little early for like a mega project, but I think we can start damming off parts of this to retain water down here. We do have a stable supply of logs, so let's start there. I'm going to do just that. We're going to start building up here. And we'll start small, but I think we'll make a retaining wall all the way around with the idea that eventually we're going to get it all the way up here. And to make building easier, since we're going to cut down all these trees anyways, I'm going to put down kind of another building platform down here. Worst case scenario, what we could do as we're building this up over time, we can put pumps on this and basically get water down here and just, have haulers pull it into town. Now, I kind of want this logger to prioritize making a path for our builders. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to just make a path this way to get rid of the trees I care about first. And then once he's done with that, I'll open him up for everything. Maybe I'll make a little staircase so the builders can get around to. We are at the last day of the drought, and we're going to make it, like I suspected, okay. But we definitely did eat up most of the water in there. Remember this time too, we did have a time where we let water out from this upper area too. And there is not a whole lot of retained water up there. Extending our water is definitely going to be our next highest priority because we are just on the cusp of what we can support. That means that we also shouldn't extend our population too much more than what we're at now. You notice we're at roughly 25 beavers, and a commenter in last episode helpfully pointed out that the ratio of a stable population is roughly like 10 beavers per regular breeding pod. So I think we should stay for the moment around 20 beavers. So that's going to be 2 breeding pods to keep a stable population around 20. Extending a dam down here, that's going to be kind of our next play to get water going. We're going to take that water all the way to the edge here. Now, we're going to get this 2 layers up to begin with. Longer term, we're going to go higher than what I currently have here. But for now, we can make this a 2 levee dam at the end. We'll plan on those levees going all the way back like that. And that will be kind of our starting shape. Since I'm cheap at the beginning, I'm just going to make these diagonal. Now the downside is the beavers can't walk on top of the dam. So eventually I'm probably going to fill in those spots too. The only tricky part to get access to is going to be to build these over here. There's not really any good access point. I think what I'm going to do is build a staircase into the river. For example, if we did this, and I'm going to splurge and unlock double platforms now. That will get down into the bottom so they can get over here. The reason I'm building that stairs here is as we build this dam higher and higher, I can just keep extending this kind of platform stairway to get down to the bottom of this dam. Oh, and bad tide. Only a couple days into the season. So our timing with our bad tide mitigation was actually perfect timing because we're going to be able to just pull this up and redirect everything off the edge of the map. I think the bad tides in the beginning of the game are shorter than everything else, so hopefully we're not going to have a really long duration one. With all these droughts going on, I think I'm going to put in another medium tank. Do you notice I said before I kind of cleared out this area? I think I'm going to take advantage of that now. We're going to put another medium tank. And remember that medium tanks are basically worth 10 of these small tanks. Bad tide has arrived and we've got a bit of a challenge. So we've got good news and bad news. Good news, our bad tide diversion system is working just like how we intended. We're dumping water off the edge. Now the bad news, our bad tide is 12 days, which is really going to stretch our supply of water. As I was just mentioning, I wanted to build this extra medium tank to hold more water, and I think that's going to be really vital for us going into this drought. Because at a population of roughly 25, we're going to need 50 water per day to keep these beavers alive. So for a 12-day drought, that means we need basically 600 water to get them through without any other water in the river. We only have 300 water and some change stockpiled, and then basically our supply of the river here. I'm going to make this medium dam and fill it anyways. And the reason I'm going to do that is for evaporation. This water right here, because it's in the open, is going to slowly evaporate over these 12 days. But if I can basically pump out the water and put it in medium tanks, I'm going to guarantee that I have enough water to keep this population going. The other thing you'll notice I've done is I've paused all my breeding pods. That is going to cause my population to fall a little bit. Actually, maybe I'll just keep one of them going. But that is going to cause the population to fall, because this is only going to me, one breeding pod will only give me a stable population of 10 beavers. And I'm doing that just so I'm not cutting it so razor thin. I just want the population to naturally fall without having people starve to death. You'll also notice that we lost some of our oak trees. As the good water got diluted from this diversion, it started to contaminate a little bit of the oak trees around the perimeter. We did finish eventually our floodgates down here, but you notice it was just a day too late, so we didn't get any water to fill in here. That will be covered for our next kind of bad season, but we just didn't make it. I do also want to maximize our food, because if we run out of water, our food supply is going to start dying off. Now we have kind of a full set of berries and kohlrabies, but not of cassavas. So I'm going to extend some of what we're planting with more cassavas to make up for it. With all that pulled away, we'll just put down the cassava in its place. Now with this oak out of commission for a bit, I'm going to plant more oak over here. Some of this you'll notice is dead space because we don't have water in here, but this is fair game up in this area. While I've got that forester selected, I'm also going to make these blueberries a little bit more dense. We can reach up to here. I want to make kind of this is going to be our dedicated berry supply. And then we can pull out the stuff that we're not using. Finally, because I kind of forgot to do this, is I need to make sure that we can chop all of these trees here. Because I noticed those lumberjacks aren't doing anything. So that's something. I temporarily kind of redirected them to get those pine trees gone. So these oaks are completely dead, but at least we can get the lumber from them. Next on my to-do list during this dry season, I hate it when I have beavers who are not busy. And I noticed that some of my farmers, because they are farming kohlrabies, and the kohlrabies are basically full, and we've got a full stockpile, it's just kind of wasted. Given that we're in the bad tide and we have potential shortage of food coming up, I think we should extend our kohlrabi storage. I arranged these warehouses in this way so that I could potentially stack them and make staircases going up. And to do that, I'm going to need platforms. Now, I could just put a platform down here and here to go up to get into the entrance. But I think I'm going to be a little sly with another suggestion a viewer gave, and that is that small warehouses and small industrial piles are cheaper than actually building platforms because they don't require any planks. So I'm going to put one of these down here and have it hold the fermented cassava, and then that way I only need one platform to kind of get up to our second layer. So I get the double purpose of getting an extra place for food, and then I don't have to spend as much for logs. 8 days into this drought, and our water is already below the halfway mark. I'm also noticing that our medium tanks aren't being topped off quickly enough. Now, knowing that this is going to run dry, when that happens, I want these filled to the brim. So I think I'm going to need another deep water pump to account for that. Space is a little tight here. I'm going to splurge and make some platforms to build it on top of. And since water is our limiting factor right now, that is the most important thing these builders could be working on at the moment. And with that built, let's go ahead and fill some water downstream for this trip. This is going to be the only top off of water in this that we're going to be able to afford. We've got 5 days to go, and we are almost out of water. You can see probably by the end of the day, our water supply is going to run out. We've got to hope that collectively this water is going to get us through the rest of the bad tide. That also means that we're going to have to start living off the food that we've already stockpiled. So we've got berries and we've got kohlrabis, and that's it. And there goes the last of our water. Okay, these guys in the pumps, they can't do anything anymore, so let's get them off of that. There goes all our crops slowly dying, so they'll be dead in 2 days. The oak trees have 16 days of life before they die, more or less. So they're going to be fine. Here on out, for the last roughly 5 days, we are living off our stockpiled goods. Now, at 26 beavers, we're going to need 55 water per day, more or less. We should be able to get through this on the water that we've got, because I think we only need 300 water. We do have a decent supply of kohlrabis. Our cassava is all gone. We never really successfully got a stockpile of that built up. So actually, water may not be our issue, food might be. Because I think the beavers need 2 to 3 supply of food. So they're probably going to be living off of berries in here. And now, for food, it's actually kind of tricky because we need to have enough food stockpiled, not just to get through the drought, but to survive the time it takes to plant new food afterwards. So we are definitely cutting this one close. I was not expecting that kind of double whammy of both the bad tide and the longest drought we've ever faced. That's making this drought very rough to get through. Now, luckily, it looks like we got kind of lucky with these finishing to grow before they died. So we're gonna get one last crop of cassava coming in. We don't have enough cassava to fill this warehouse. We have all these berries ready to pick. I'm gonna grab as much berries as I can before they die. Same with this. We've got fully grown kohlrabi here that's ready to be harvested. Let's make sure we've got people over here harvesting. We'll grab all the food that we can before it dies. Gotta get this food to last as long as we can. And that's where this extra storage is coming in handy too. 3 days to go and our plants are finally dying out. Water is looking fine. So we're not in great shape, but I think we're gonna get through this. The good news too is that while we've been taking care of all that, our builders have been hard at work continuing this dam down here. So we only have 2 more levees to go, and then we'll have an extra supply of water down here. And this will be good for long droughts like this, because what we could do is we could move some of this food production down here, and they could potentially move some backup pumps down here to get us through bad droughts. We could also consider kind of building this part up. I'm not sure how far we are to the top of the map. So for example, if I were to just build this up, how much higher could I go? Well, quite high. I'm not even close to the limit yet. Really? Okay, that is the limit. That's how high this can go. So in theory, we could make a very kind of extra dam up here. And with the 3D water physics, we could actually maybe make a dam that extends outward. But that is to say that we could put some water up here in the future. In fact, we could actually cut into these trees if we really wanted to, and we can make this much wider. Yeah, that could be another good option for us, especially since that's not that expensive. We're like, if these trees are going to get contaminated anyways or die off, we can replace it with the tree production down here and just give us extra water supply for backup up here. And with our dam down here, our builders have actually finished their last major project. I can see that they're going to be idle now. So I think that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have them start working on this as our next kind of major backup for water. So first problem I'm going to have is getting them to actually get over there to build. So for that, I'm going to attack this from 2 directions. I'm going to make a walkway over there. And then I also want to get builders up on this cliff. And early on, you noticed I was saying that we're going to keep this area right here available for that. That's what I'm going to do. We're going to build more or less a walkway over there. So this will let the builders basically attack this from 2 different angles. They can build it from the left and the right-hand side. And I'll come up with some plan to make this higher. I could just build on top of it. That would be the cheapest thing to do. But I'm going to make it wider at the same time. Actually, and I feel really bad for these beavers. I've still got half the population without a home. I will cave in and then give them a second home. And this is it. This is the last day before the drought ends. So I think we did pretty good living off of our stockpiled food. We actually still had a full medium tank that we hadn't touched. We got most of the way through that one. And we still have enough food that's going to allow us to replant and have another full growing season. Given that, I'm going to unpause another one of our breeding pods, because I imagine some of these beavers are going to start dying out of old age pretty soon. Also, with our cassava coming in, we're going to have to make another storage for it, because you can see I temporarily used it to double up our berry production. And we made it. There's the good water flowing again. Drop that gate and redirect it down here. Yeah, that was a very rough cycle 6. Luckily, we did get through it. We had enough food stockpiled. I do want to see us through to get back on our feet, though. Our farmers are already very busy getting food replanted. I don't need anybody on this rush berry duty anymore either, so we can pause all of these, get those beavers back. We can start resuming our pumping again. You can see our new backup supply of water is starting to fill up, so that's good. All that work that we did during the drought is going to buy us an extra supply. And while this water is going to help a little bit, to stay in front of the difficulty curve, we're really going to have to start working on more water very quick. Because if the prior droughts are any indication, we might only have like 6 days before the next drought hits. Now, we've started to get a good stockpile of science at 500 up. Is there anything important that we can spend that on? Well, I do see we've got a sick beaver here. A medical bed only costs 80. I think that's worth spending to get him back in order. And as expected, by day 3, we've already got our next drought approaching. Now, thankfully, this is a regular drought and not a bad tide. But still, we're going to have to work under the assumption that it's going to be another long one. I do think we should extend our upper water as quickly as we possibly can. And if we're lucky, maybe in the 3 days, we can extend this to get a little bit more water. Even if we can't get the full height, the full increased height done. But with that, I think we're at a good stopping point for this episode. We got through a pretty brutal bad tide there. Now, we did have to live off our stockpiled food, but we made it. I think this underlines just how difficult hard mode can ramp up. We did almost double our supply of water with this downward lake, so I think that is going to at least get us through the next couple of droughts before we're going to get into trouble again. As always, I hope you enjoy these videos, and I hope to catch you next time.